What would happen if a year's worth of rain fell in just one day? On October 29, 2024, Valencia, Spain, experienced this harrowing reality. What began as an ordinary autumn storm quickly escalated into a catastrophic downpour, with the skies unleashing torrents of water that turned streets into raging rivers. Cars were swept away like paper boats, homes crumbled under the weight of the deluge, and an entire city found itself submerged. Valencia had seen storms before, but never like this. How did it spiral out of control so fast? And was there any warning before disaster struck? The stage was set for disaster on the 29th of October. A Dana, or isolated high-altitude depression, hovered ominously over Valencia. This weather system, typically harmless, transformed into a monster as it stalled above the city. Trapped by a stagnant jet stream, the storm fed on endless moisture from the Mediterranean Sea. With each passing hour, it grew stronger. Meteorologists monitored the situation closely. The Spanish Meteorological Agency, AEMET, issued an orange warning early in the day. This alert indicated that severe weather was on the way, but few could comprehend the scale of the disaster about to unfold. For the people of Valencia, it felt like just another autumn storm, unpredictable, but not alarming. As the clouds thickened, an uneasy calm settled over the city. The air was heavy with moisture, almost holding its breath. Life went on as people continued their daily routines, unaware that everything was about to change. When the first raindrops fell, they were light and gentle, masking the storm's true intentions. However, Valencia's flat terrain made the urban area vulnerable to flooding. With increasing urbanization, more impervious surfaces were created, limiting water absorption and worsening flash flooding. The echoes of the past also loomed large. The 1957 Valencia flood, a devastating event, had already caused at least 81 fatalities and extensive property damage. That disaster was triggered by a similar meteorological phenomenon called a cold drop, gota fria. It served as a grim reminder of the power of nature, and now it seemed history was set to repeat itself. Soon the skies would unleash their fury. Then it happened. One drop, then another, and then the skies opened up. The rain poured relentlessly, drowning the city in mere hours. Some areas saw over 300 millimeters, 12 inches, of rain. But in Shiva, the numbers were even more staggering. 500 millimeters, 20 inches, fell in just 8 hours. Valencia's flat landscape made things worse. Water had nowhere to go. The streets turned into raging rivers. Cars floated and flipped like toys in a bathtub. People panicked as the floodwaters rose. The city's defenses weren't built for this. Drains clogged, bridges cracked, roads disappeared, sidewalks crumbled under the force of the rushing water. Emergency sirens blared across the city. Rescue teams rushed in, but the rain didn't stop. Time was running out. Every second, the water swallowed more of Valencia. A once bustling city now looked like a vast, endless sea. This wasn't just a storm, it was a disaster that no one would ever forget. Flash floods surged through Valencia's streets, turning roads into torrents and sweeping away everything in their path. Cars floated like debris, crashing into buildings before vanishing beneath the water. Businesses and homes were submerged within minutes, leaving residents with no time to react. The town of Paiporta became the hardest hit, with over 62 lives lost as floodwaters consumed entire neighborhoods. Families were trapped inside their homes, unable to escape the rising currents. Electrical grids failed, plunging the city into darkness as the storm raged on. Emergency calls flooded dispatch centers, but responders struggled to reach those in need. Bridges collapsed under the sheer force of the water, severing key routes and isolating entire districts. Roads disintegrated, making ground rescue nearly impossible. A lot of vehicles were damaged or destroyed, leaving thousands stranded without a means of escape. As the storm intensified, floodwaters broke through barriers meant to protect the city. Underground parking garages filled within seconds, trapping anyone inside. Subway stations were inundated, cutting off one of the city's main transport networks.
Se ha roto el puente, se está inundando todo. Se nos va a inundar la casa también, me voy para abajo.
Those who managed to escape the lower levels climbed onto rooftops, waiting in freezing rain for help to arrive. By the evening of October 29th, the flood had reached catastrophic levels. Entire neighborhoods were underwater, and thousands remained trapped. The Spanish government declared a national emergency, deploying the Military Emergencies Unit, UME, to assist overwhelmed rescue teams. Initially, around 2,000 people were reported missing, but this number decreased significantly as rescue efforts progressed. Soldiers, firefighters, and volunteers waded through chest-deep water, using inflatable boats to reach those in need. Helicopters circled above, pulling survivors from rooftops as the floodwaters continued to rise. In some areas, strong currents made rescue missions nearly impossible, forcing teams to wait for a brief break in the storm. With roads wiped out, emergency supplies were airlifted into the hardest-hit areas. Food, blankets, and medical aid were distributed, but resources quickly ran low. Hospitals overflowed with injured residents, many suffering from hypothermia, wounds from debris, or near drownings. Despite the efforts, help came too late for many. Some were swept away before rescuers could reach them. Others were found trapped in cars or buildings, victims of a disaster that escalated too quickly to escape. Families searched for missing loved ones, while authorities worked tirelessly to account for the dead and displaced. As the storm finally began to weaken, the scale of the devastation became clear. Entire streets were unrecognizable. Buried under mud and debris, the floods resulted in a total death toll of at least 232 people. With 224 fatalities in the province of Valencia, 7 in Castilla-La Mancha, and 1 in Andalusia. The majority of deaths occurred in localities that did not experience direct rainfall, highlighting the unexpected nature of the flooding. Thousands were left homeless, their possessions lost to the flood. The fight for survival had ended, but the struggle to rebuild was only beginning. Valencia was left in ruins, mud-covered streets, collapsed buildings, lives forever changed. The government promised aid. Residents and volunteers worked day and night to rebuild. But the scars of October 29th remain, a harsh reminder of nature's fury. The financial impact was devastating. Munich Re estimated the total damage at 10.7 billion euros. That's about $11 billion. Of that, only 4.1 billion euros, roughly $4.2 billion, was insured. Insurance companies recorded over 116,000 claims, totaling at least 3.5 billion euros, $3.8 billion. 60% of those claims were for cars, 31% for homes. Spain's economy took a hit. The floods reduced the country's GDP by up to 0.2%. The financial sector alone suffered losses of 20.5 billion euros, around $21.6 billion. The destruction was staggering. More than 100,000 vehicles were damaged. 40,000 were completely totaled. 1,800 businesses were destroyed. 4,500 others suffered heavy damage. Could it happen again? Experts warn that extreme weather is becoming more frequent. The Valencia flood wasn't just a disaster, it was a wake-up call. Without better protections, could Spain face another catastrophe? One thing is certain. The lessons of October 29th must not be ignored. As Valencia picks up the pieces after the chaos, the footage of the destruction serves as a haunting reminder of nature's power. Streets submerged, homes devastated, and communities shattered highlight the urgent need to rethink how we prepare for unpredictable storms. The city is resilient, but we must all stay informed about recovery efforts and future risks. If you want to keep up with this journey and more stories like it, subscribe to stay in the loop.